further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this conversation. By now, you already know what we're talking about. Red flags, legit or counterfeit. How to tell if he or she is legit or counterfeit. So, one common denominator that I recognize that we all have as human beings is that we're a spirit, we have a soul, we live in a body. We have emotions, we have our thoughts, we have our will, we have our intellect, we have our desires, we have our aspirations, and we're not all homogenous. So those aspirations, those desires, they're going to differentiate from one another. But one thing I do know that we all can agree on in the context of what tonight's topic is all about is that the vast majority of us desire to be in an exclusive relationship. I'm not talking about entanglement or endangerment. I'm talking about an exclusive monogamous relationship. If y'all remember the last conversation we had when we were talking about resentment versus contentment, I referenced Paul because Paul had a desire that really just didn't sit well with me. And now this desire that he had, he said, I wish that all men were like me. Y'all remember that? And what he was single. And he was focused on ministry, his assignment, but he was single. And 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 7, just for scripture reference, says, I wish that all, now he was including everybody, I wish that all men were as I am, but each man has his own gift from God. One has this gift, that means the gift of singleness, and another has that. And he basically went on to say, and for those of you who can't control yourselves, it's better to marry than to burn with passion. Now, for me, that means, sexual desires and a longing for companionship. Now, in this day and age, I don't know, and I'll say it again, I don't know that many Pauls that are living nowadays. And as far as I'm concerned, most people are burning with passion. And most people desire to have a relationship with someone. Now, in light of that, I even reference Genesis. The Bible says it's not good for man to be alone. Now, of course, God knew why it wasn't good for man to be alone. And we can go down that rabbit hole. But this brings us to this about relationship. Because we desire relationships, we understand that there's this process. There's the initial phase. There's the dating phase. And I want to stop here because as a Christian, as a believer, as I was growing up, you heard that Christians don't date. They court. They court. Now, as far as I'm concerned, dating for me means to collect data. Now, there are people who have dated and the relationship wasn't successful. And then you have those who dated and the relationship was successful. It led to marriage. You have people who courted and the relationship was successful. And then you have Christians who courted and they ended up in court. They ended up in divorce court and it ended. It resolved. So for me, I think that what matters is what you do within the confines of those labels as you're getting to know someone. That means you set certain boundaries. You want to make sure that you don't put yourself in compromising positions. But nevertheless, whether you choose to use dating or you choose to use courting, this is a time for you. And actually, in my opinion, I think dating should come before courting, but it is what it is. For you to collect information on this person to see if this is a person that you feel like you can have a long-term relationship with. And during that time, most people encounter red flags and they do one or two things. Either they ignore them and proceed, or they go the opposite directions. And some of these signs are just common sense. and others are biblical sense. Now, for me, I take this as an opportunity to say, you know what, let me check out this guy. Let me see what he's all about. You know what I'm saying? And based on what I'm gathering and what I'm learning, I'll choose to either go the opposite direction or proceed. I have not always been successful. I'm gonna keep that honest. I have not always been successful with making the right decisions, but you know, it is what it is. So I have a question for you, and I'm gonna start with the men because I want to know what factors determine for you, Asif and YPJ, determines if she is legit or counterfeit? What factors from a male perspective? What factors? I see this smile. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, YP.
Well, first of all, you just say it so much that I'm trying to remember everything. um, when Paul talked about being single, Paul at one time was married. You couldn't be on the Jewish council unless you were married. So
Whoa, that's new to me.
yeah, he had to be married. So whether his wife was deceased or whatever the case, in most cases that was the issue. They were deceased, but he was a Pharisee, and Pharisees, before Paul received sanctification, they would divorce randomly. That's why Jesus came against him for that reason. But he felt like at that point in his life, since he knew what marriage was like, it would actually hinder him in what he was assigned to do. So you brought that out very clear. Some people stay single for the sake of an assignment. And then there are those who just they just don't want to be bothered. You have people that just don't have the same desires and same needs. For me, red flags are so random because, again, it's such an individualized thing. It's what I have learned. What one person calls a red flag, another person calls a turn on. It's the strangest dynamic. So you just have to really decipher what you can tolerate. And I think the older I get, and Asif and I, we share this because we're both very busy men. So our tolerance level is very low. And it doesn't mean that we're not patient men. We're patient when it comes to tolerance. So anything that I feel will push me over the edge or make me revert, where I got to go back to teach mode all the time, for me, it's part of a deterrence.
So basically, there's a lid. You're not saying when you reference all the time, you're saying it's okay some of the time, but not all the time. Because when you're meeting someone, you're learning them, and they got to learn you. So
we all need education, but there are those who you recognize and realize that you're not either going in the same direction or the level is just too far spaced. There's credit to them. That doesn't make you better or whatever. And they can feel that same way about you. The level is too far spaced.
Yeah.
I have 2 children. She meets a great guy who just doesn't understand parenting at all. And she can look and go, he's nice, but the level is too far spaced. I'm in this already. I need somebody that can come in and understand. So a person says, as much as I like him, I can't go backwards as a parent and raise him and them. I need somebody that gets it. So it isn't an insult. It's just basically saying, I realize that there is sometimes a space where I can't teach you to come up to where I'm at currently in my life.
Asif, what do you have to say to that?
I totally agree. I think for me, and I probably speak for, I would say, keen-minded men that actually have to make decisions for multiple people, because there's 2 different type of people. You got people that only got to worry about themselves, and then you got people who actually have to be careful because other people look up to them, or they watch them, or they have to lead them. So, I can't just go do whatever I want to do because of my positioning. So for me, a woman has to have capacity, because the truth is there's no perfect situation. At the end of the day, you called it the dating phase, Sharon. In the dating phase, you say you're gathering data where along with gathering the data, it's important to understand also what a person is, their agenda, and what they're actually looking for. So a person may not understand my life, but if they have the capacity to learn it, then that can actually happen too. So you got some people, they don't have patience. And then you got some people that don't have the capacity. I only got time to be worrying about me and my child. or they may have the capacity. I really can only go to church, once a month, or I can only really have the capacity to be praying. I don't want to have Bible study more than once, because having a relationship with God is very important. And what ends up happening, and Christ, that Christ-minded piece is so important. So somebody having the capacity can really learn how to love me. But if they don't have the capacity to do that, then I'm trying to force something that they're not interested in. And then then you'll fall in love with somebody you don't like.
You can do that. You can fall in love with someone you don't like.
You can fall in love with someone you don't like, because instead of once you with someone that doesn't have the capacity, you got to lean on conditions to be with them. Now, it's like you have now money is an issue. You know what? He has a lot of money, or she's got her own money, or, then there's a physicality part. Then there's like, oh my God, it's easy to sleep with her, or it's easy, we know he can do this. So then there's conditions, you know what? They can pick up a phone call and get me a job. They can pick up a phone call and get me an appointment. Now you got, resources. So I call those the three hubs. You got sex, money, and power. So you leaning on that to be with someone. And then if you fall in love with somebody because of conditions, you can end up falling in love with somebody you don't like.
Interesting. And I don't disagree at all. You said something. You said that they have the time to actually learn it. So one red flag that comes to mind is people, or if a person decides that they want to marry potential, what they can possibly be or who they possibly can be, right? Now, typically you make that decision while you are dating, because you are saying, you know what, maybe later on down the line, they'll get it. They're slowly learning me. So I'm thinking that by the time we get into marriage, or even after marriage, that they would have caught up. So at what point in time do you cut that off? If they have time to learn me, and I know that's subjective to everyone. I know that there are women who put 6 months, 3 months, but I want to know, at what point in time do you say, you know what, you had enough time to come up to where where I think you should be, especially for this relationship to be successful, because time is one thing that you can't get back.
I'd love to chime in for that one. So personally, I was at a point once in my life where I definitely would put a time limit on it. Like, okay, you got a couple months to show me, what you talking about, what you working with. But I think now that I've gotten older and I'm able to really, be further in my relationship with Christ, what kind of fruit are they bearing? Some fruit takes longer to bear than other fruit. If you're trying to become a bookkeeper or a lawyer or a doctor or a personal trainer, are you taking classes for that? Are you studying for your certifications? Are you learning more? Are you trying to see how you would get clients, things like that? So I feel like it's not in every situation, but it's mostly not right to maybe put a time limit on it for me, but let me see what kind of fruit you're bearing. And that'll really show me if, one, you're connected to the vine, and two, if you're really, going after or pursuing what you're talking about pursuing and going after.
Got you. I see that perspective. Anise, you have something to chime in on?
Danielle, you really hit the nail right on the head. When a person shows you who they are, believe them. I want to back up a little bit and hone in on the counterfeit piece. So one thing that really stood out to me was that the definition of counterfeit.
Okay.
So Wikipedia defines a counterfeit as a means to imitate something authentic with the intent to steal, destroy, or replace the original, or otherwise to deceive individuals into believing that the fake is of equal or greater value than the real thing. And I remember years ago when I first got saved, I was in a relationship with my high school sweetheart at the time.
Okay.
And I just knew that this person was the one, but I paid attention to the red flags. And because of that, I was able to avoid a lot of serious heartache. One of the red flags that I was able to identify in that relationship was the red flag of non-committal. So this person wanted to play house. This person didn't want to commit. They didn't want to put a ring on my finger. So that was one red flag to me that was really obvious. Another flag was the lying flag, you know, always lying about their whereabouts. You know, just, and when you really got to pay attention to that flag, when you see that red flag, because you cannot build any type of relationship on lies. That's like trying to build a house on sand.
Okay.
So long story short, God ended up revealing to me that this person and I were unequally yoked. And so, you know, the relationship ended up, you know, dissolving, but I'm just grateful that, you know, at that time, you know, I wasn't blinded by love. Because a lot of times, you know, we get blinded by love and we see those red flags, and God is trying to show us the counterfeit, but sometimes we ignore it.
True. I want to back up to what Danielle was saying, because it it kind of sort of went against what Asaph and YP, if I had the correct understanding. Danielle was saying that sometimes it does take time for that fruit to show up. It does take time. But on the other hand, I heard YP and I heard Asaph talk about, I don't have time really to be playing around. At the age that I am, I basically, it sounds to me that there is a time limit that you have when it comes to women showing, you know, their character, showing if they are a person that you feel like you could invest in and have a long-term relationship with. So can you clarify that? Do you have some type of time constraint as it pertains to women?
For me, less time, lower tolerance, more time, more tolerance. There's some people that have more time and they can tolerate more. Asaph is one of, and I'm giving him his flowers, one of the greatest producers, not gospel, just producers ever. He's a genius. He's the highest level producer you can get. You put him next to Teddy Riley. I'm going old school first. You can put him next to Timbaland. He's at that level. Asaph is not hiring a drummer that he has to take time to teach rudiments, and he's got to bring in a Calvin. He's got to bring in Freddie. He has to bring in an Aaron Spears, because he needs to be able to tell this person, hey, this is what I need, and I need it right now, because he has time. Whereas if Asaph is doing a choir for a church and there's no deadline, he says, hey, let's give this young boy an opportunity. Opportunity to learn, and Asaph can teach him. So it depends on the situation. There are some women who have all the time in the world to see a man flourish and be fruitful and come into his maturity and stop drinking and stop doing. That's great. But as you start to get older and you realize that you have great things that you've acquired and accomplished on your own, you're like, I can't really take the time to teach you about how I live. I can't show you how to put a napkin on your lap at this age. I can't teach you at a 5-star restaurant, and somebody else will do that. So it's not like this is a law.
Right.
It's just, I'm saying that there are those who, when they reach a certain capacity, there's a level of tolerance they won't have. And it doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means there's levels to life.
Absolutely. Asaph.
I mean, he really said it. I think it, like I said, it's not a law. I think what I'm realizing is because I self-reflect myself a lot. I blot out my own eye a lot.
Okay.
So since I take that approach, I have to check. The honesty doesn't start. We always point the honesty towards the other person, but the honesty has to start with the person that's looking. And the truth is,
Mm-hmm.
everyone who's looking for a relationship, they're not looking for it like that. Sometimes they're looking for the benefits of it at the moment. So what ends up happening is you got a person coming in and they act like they want a relationship, or as YPJ said, musicians know Asaph's not playing around. So the ones that aren't ready don't approach me like that. So it's about agenda, it's about understanding and respecting what
following.
I am a man who walks like a husband. I don't know how to really act like a single person. Me and YB talk about this. I'm not that. I don't know how to do that. So since I am a walking husband, even though I'm not legally married, a woman has to have a capacity to not want just the benefits, but she has to want to be ready. And sometimes men are not ready and women are not ready, but we want the benefit of it. So we just take the journey and we just do that. And that's not the case. So yeah, the tolerance is don't waste time, because time gathers feelings.
Yeah.
And then after feelings, a while, conditions will come into the picture, because even unconditional relationships have conditions. You're not going to ignore those things. You got to talk about money. You got to be able to be physical. There's affection. There's all these things. So spending too much time with a person who's not ready, that's not a problem. It's okay that you're not ready, but self-reflect and be honest and tell yourself you're not ready, so you don't take a person who is ready through that.
I love it. I love it. So when it comes to that statement about a red flag, one of the red flags is marrying for potential. Of course, we don't want to marry someone, the person that we think they're going to be. They have to bear that fruit. And so from what I'm hearing, that type of flag can possibly be subjective based on your level of maturity, based on the things that you've gone through in life, based on where you are. Like YPJ said, there are some women who do have time to sit with you and to kind of just, I should say, walk with you on that journey as you're growing. And then there are men and women who are just like, look, at this stage in my life, it ain't happening, Captain. I got things to do, places to go. I need you to be here or here, and you need to bring me up. So I get it. You said something before I heard you say this, and I want to talk about this. And I'm referring to you, YPJ. You said this. You said that sometimes what people think are red flags are actually triggers. That has never left me. Can you share a little bit about that statement?
Yeah, for sure. And it's just something that I realized oftentimes we consider things red flags based on some traumatic trigger that we have from our past. So a person will do something that remotely has a similar aspect to some negative person. And so we're like, oh my God, this is a red flag because he chews his fingernails. That's what my boyfriend did. You know what I'm saying? And it's like the association is actually the situation you come out of. But for me, the person that did something to you wrong before may have done it intentionally, whereas the person that you're dealing with right now may not have done that intentionally. And it's a repetitive thing that they do. It's just that they did it that time. So you reflect on the individual that constantly did that to you to antagonize you or to hurt you. And this person, again, like this person may say to you, look at you with your little short hair. And they're actually giving you a compliment. Somebody else said, look at you with your little short hair, and you knew the next thing coming was an insult about your hair. So you triggered and you're like, oh, it's a red flag. No, it's a trigger. So you didn't even see communication on what they actually meant when they made the statement. And a lot of folks are so quick to cut before they inquire. So I just things that we have that are legitimate red flags, but then there's some things that are just triggers.
Ooh. That is so good. They cut before they inquire, which means that communication is so important. It is so important that I do not lean on my assumptions. One thing I've learned just over the course of just my years as being a single woman is communication, and communication that is effective. I'm a very detail oriented person. I love the deets. And I feel like you just cannot over communicate. That is just me. You cannot over communicate, because there are sometimes I found myself having a conversation. And even though I thought I was clear, the takeaway was not what I was trying to portray. So I believe that communication is key. And one thing that I've learned as it pertains to just relationships in general, that it is so important that you do identify triggers. Now, how are we going to identify those triggers? Well, we know that life has brought us certain circumstances and different traumatic experiences. And most times we know within ourselves the things that trigger us. We know the things that happen to us. We know why we react a certain way. And then there are times where a therapist is included, and they begin to help us break these barriers and open up and to share about these traumatic experiences. And I think it's so important that as we engage with relationships, with friendships, whether it's romantic, whether it's platonic, whether it's on a business level, that you do communicate, that you do not assume, that you say, you know what, let me find out what this person actually meant when they said this to me. I know that I may have experienced this before. And as you said, Pastor YPJ, that this person was intentional about hurting me. But this person who says that they love me, and we've gotten an opportunity. And I think most times we're able to avoid that when we decide to actually get to know an individual. And I think that's one red flag when you're rushing something, rushing. Like, I don't like to be pressured. I don't like to feel like I'm pushed up against the wall. So my thing is, taking the time to get to know someone will help you know their intentions for you. So then that way you won't cut them off, but you'll communicate with them to find out, hey, you know what did you mean by that? Because there was a point in my life where this happened to me, and that right there reminded me of that specific situation. So that is so true. We have, in some cases, and I'm going to be honest, I cut off before I inquired because I felt like I don't want to be hurt again. That was a red flag. Forget it. Walls are going up immediately. Asa, Anise, anybody want to chime in on that?
Yes, I love how you said when you feel like something can be a trigger for you, something that someone says or has done to you in the past, and it may come up again, but the person you're with now doesn't have any ill intention behind it. Mm-hmm. Sharon, I love how you said, well, what did you mean by that? Because in my last situation or my last relationship, because if you leave that last part off, it can definitely come off as paranoid. Like, well, what did you mean? What did you mean by that? It can definitely come off as paranoid or defensive. Like you said, what would you mean by that? So it's really all in the tone and the communication at the end. So because that's the phrase that was running through my mind when you were talking. What did you mean by that? Like, explain yourself, elaborate. I need a little more than that. So I love how you added that at the end, because that would definitely kind of open up some like neural pathways for the other person that you're speaking with. Like, oh, well, let me make sure I get my verbiage right when I do talk to her like that, or do want to say something like that to her. So I'm definitely going to use that and not just cut off at the end. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Because that could get really messy really quickly.
And you know what? I do believe men already have this general perception that women have attitudes. They're snappy. So what do you mean by that? And then there's the snapping, there's the neck rolling, and I know that is a turn off for a lot of men. So I like how you said.
I like that stuff. There's some weirdos out here that like that.
It's giving paranoia, like.
No, and you know what? There are some very snappy women that do exist, and some men too. I feel like you said something important. When you're communicating, your tone is so important.
The only time I've ever gotten in trouble in school was because of my tone. And I wasn't even saying anything like rude. I just said it in a way that was, and I was talking to a teacher. That's why I got in trouble. My principal told me it's all about perception. It's not what you meant, what you said or how you meant it. It's how the other person received it. And that was like 15 years ago, and that really stuck with me. So tone is very important. I know you guys wouldn't know, but I definitely sometimes have how do I want to say this? Abrupt tone, if you will. Like when I'm at work, when I'm trying to explain something, and I feel like it's come from where I've worked. I've always worked in like a business arena. Sharon, you always tell me how corporate I am.
Yes.
I always talk to, bankers and private client bankers and, equity people and personal investing, workplace investing people. So I had to establish, as a Black woman, shock, surprise, surprise, I had to establish a certain, demeanor, not mean, but just I'm saying what I'm meaning, and I'm meaning what I'm saying. And this is it. Like, I work here, you don't type of vibe. But I had to control that, especially when I came into the body of Christ, because, babe, why are you so angry? Why are you so short?
Mm-hmm.
And if y'all, for the people who know me, I am short physically, but I was also short, like, with
as far as your tone and your attitude.
Yeah, thank you. Not my attitude, my tone.
Which can also be a red flag for a lot of men.
Right.
They do not like to deal with women who are snappy and have attitudes. Now, if you know that, you can type amen in the comments section if you agree. Check this out. There's this comment on the screen that either you, Asif, or YP, it says this: triggers are relevant. I think it's relevant, or triggers are relevant to unforgiveness towards yourself or other individuals. Triggers are relevant to unforgiveness towards yourself or other individuals. I see this face. Asa?
Well, that was kind of loose. It's kind of hard to not know for sure what that person really, really meant.
Okay.
By the relevancy of triggers, because triggers, I can smell the rain and have a trigger that reminded me of third grade. That wasn't a negative thought. So it's important to know exactly what this person meant by unforgiveness. How it's relevant for unforgiveness. So whoever wrote that, it would help if I knew exactly more what they actually meant by that.
So if you're in the comment section and you want to kind of bring some clarity to that, by all means, please do so. I don't want to assume, well, when I saw that triggers are relevant to unforgiveness towards, I guess, other individuals, I was thinking that they were saying that some people, and I don't know if they were saying that because we were talking about attitudes and the way that we address people and so forth and so on. There are people who harbor unforgiveness, and because of that unforgiveness, and they're angry all the time because of something that happened to them, if they haven't dealt with that, then they can appear to be a red flag to someone because they have not dealt with that unforgiveness or whatever traumatic experiences have occurred with them. Now, that's just where I was going with it, but I would love for them to come back and kind of bring some clarity to that.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, based on like this whole trigger thing, I do believe that a robber is a robber, a murderer or a psychopath is a psychopath. So what I'm saying is sometimes you can meet a person that may say or do something that triggers you. But the truth is, a person has to get delivered from that trigger, because the truth is, this person over here might be a real trigger. You know, you might meet a person over here who really is going to beat your tail, just like the last time. And that triggered the way they raised their hand at you.
Yeah.
You thought that they was going to hit you. That might have been a real trigger. But then you got a person that wasn't going to do that. I think you have to get healed from some of those triggers, because, you know, I believe that everybody has them. I have them. We all have experienced some type of trigger, but I do know that love isn't primary. I said this before, love isn't primary, safety is. So I think it's hard when you don't get to know a person, because some people we just know are great people. They have good hearts. But what happens is, because of triggers, that person gets put in the box of all of the other things, other people who may suffer in those areas. So I think getting to know a person is really key, because, you know, yeah, you triggered me, but I know who you are. I know you didn't mean anything by that, you know, and then that person needs a chance to apologize, because I'm a type of person, I believe somebody I love and I care about on purpose, and some of us don't care about some people. Let's just be honest. Some of us don't care about some people, so we don't have a proactive feeling to even address the trigger. We just don't care what you're not that important to me. But somebody who's important to us, I really do believe it's important for us to believe them. I can honestly say, you know, I've been working with Sharon for some time, and we're close. We're like family. We've been through a lot of different things. And my thing is, if Sharon tell me I hurt her feelings, I might feel like I didn't, but that's not my place to say no, I didn't. That's on you. My thing is, I'm gonna believe her that I did. That doesn't mean that I meant to. It doesn't mean that that was even my intention. I'm going to apologize for hurting her feelings, and hopefully she will forgive that. And what ends up happening is, I think we don't like believing each other. We want to believe what we're doing, but we got to start knowing people enough to accept them. When they tell us something, they meant it. So triggers have to be, you got to be delivered from triggers, or you would treat the people that are very close to you, that you love dearly, like the man on the street, the woman on the street.
This is so good. This is really good. I'm going to go down a list of red flags, and feel free to share what you perceive to be red flags, guys. But before I do that, I want to go back to something, because Paul talked about the whole passion piece. And I was wondering, when it comes to that, is it okay to marry because you are burning with passion? Because he said, you know, he wished that we were single, but you know what? Pretty much get married. If you that hot, go ahead and get married. Is it okay to get married for that reason, and then add the other pieces later on? What's your thought on that? Go ahead, YP. Oh, Annalise.
Biblically, you can get married for any reason. I mean, as long as it's legal, there's nothing people can get married for the dumbest stuff in the world. Problem is, you're not supposed to get divorced for any reason. So if you get married for sex and the sex ain't hot no more, just remember why you got married. Figure it out. You know what I'm saying? So Paul was dealing with something really crazy in that time frame, though.
Share, please.
There were a lot of issues surrounding marriage, because the Pharisees had screwed up everybody's mindset about marriage. And this is why the Apostle Paul was addressing it, because Jesus had to address it. There was just a lot of chaos associated with it. And when you deal with Corinthians, the Corinthians were chaotic people, because they were coming out of idol worship and out of all kinds of idolatry, trying to embrace Christianity. So he wasn't just introducing Christ, he was trying to change the whole culture. He's like, look, If y'all can't stop having sex, because they were very sexual people. They were homosexual, they were trisexual, bisexual, they were doing everything. He says, if you so laden with lust, then get married so you can take it out on your spouse. I think what happens is people take that text and they create way too much absolutes around it when it was really addressing a situation that was happening. So you can get married for whatever reason you want, but I think that's not wisdom. You know, to get married for sex is not wisdom, but it's not a sin. So if anybody was to say, oh, it's a sin to do, it's not. That's why Paul said you can do that. But he wasn't encouraging people to do that. He said, last resort, if you can't stop doing that, then go ahead and get married for the sake of that.
Anise, you were going to say something.
Now, I've never been married before, but me personally, and I would not, because I am a Christian, I would not have sex with someone, a man, before marrying him. That's just me. I used the analogy earlier of, building a house on sand. Having sex is just one primary need that, will be met, but will that need be sustained? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's other reasons. You have to look at the purpose of marriage.
Okay.
God did not solely create marriage just for sex. Yes, the Bible does say that two are better than one.
And he also told us to be fruitful and multiply.
Right. He did say be fruitful and to multiply.
Okay.
But to enter into a relationship just solely for that purpose. So now you're being fruitful and you're multiplying and you have all these kids out here, but what if you and that individual are not physically compatible, or spiritually compatible? What if you two are going in different directions in life? What if God has called and destined you to be, international evangelist, and you're traveling all around the world, and that person, perhaps this person wants to stay at home, or maybe this person may not want to be supportive, of the call that you have on your life. So it's very wise to ensure that you are also aligned with this person, physically, spiritually, mentally. So in my opinion, I don't think it's wise just to get married because you're burning with that passion. I think that you need to learn self-control.
Discipline.
And that's a good answer. But the question you asked was, is it wrong? You're absolutely right. That's the proper mature approach. But the question you asked, wrong. And it's not wrong. But I think we both agree it's just probably not the smartest thing to do.
It's not.
I want to clarify that because the question was, is it wrong for you to marry somebody for sex? Nah, but why would you do that? Like, who's got sex that crazy that you,
who, where?
Married.
Where? I get it.
You know what I'm saying? And then you get married and realize it ain't.
Oh man, so many things are coming back to mind because on our last session, I guess back in February, they talked about sexual compatibility and how that is a factor in marriage. And that things with marrying someone, how much that plays into the marriage, and that is important. Now, there are some people who do want to be not only just spiritually compatible, but sexually compatible with their spouse. Now, we're not going to go into how do you find out if you are, but I think we
how can you not though? That's the question. Like, you can't. How can you not go into that?
Well, let's go into it.
I don't want to touch it. I'm gonna get at that.
You don't want to. Well, how you gonna say? Let's go into it. But here's the thing. I feel like this. In a discussion, once you've reached, I guess, maybe a point of maturity, because I think people are afraid to talk about this topic just as Christians, as believers, as it's not something that's important. And it is. And there's nothing wrong with having that discussion. I think it's important. I think that at some point in time, if you and a young lady are seriously, considering being in a relationship with one another, that there is a conversation that can be had about sexual intercourse. It's not engaging, but just having one. Just, okay, are you the type of person that wants to have sex multiple times a week, or how many times a day? Or if I'm really not interested, or I'm really not the type of person that enjoys sex that much, that can be a factor that says, that's a red flag. Because if I enjoy sexual intercourse, but you don't on the level that I do, then one or the other will begin to suffer in that area. And to me, that can potentially lead to you having your eyes gaze on someone else to fulfill those desires. So I just think for me, as it pertains to that passionate piece, I think it's not something that you should marry just solely on, but I do believe that it is important to a marriage. It is important. And that's just my opinion. Now, here's a comment here that I want to bring up. I've been waiting to click on this. It said, finding a spouse is not the problem. The problem is finding someone equally yoked, that's spiritual and have an understanding of the righteousness of God and a sense of real legacy. I love that. Here's the thing about equally yoked, because there are some people who believe this, and I thought this initially, that someone who is equally yoked with me is someone who works in the same field as me. You love God, but you also sing. You're also a musician. You enjoy everything that I enjoy. But to me, that's not necessarily true. I think you can be equally yoked. One thing that I believe is important is, if I have faith in Jesus Christ, of course, that is a non-negotiable. Faith in Jesus Christ. I cannot be a Christian and then you're something else. No, we have to. I want my husband to have a relationship with God. I want that to be his main priority, God first. And then if he loves God, then he's going to know essentially how to love me and my son, and love me like Christ loved the church. So it's important that we serve the same God. But equally yoked doesn't necessarily mean that we work in the same field. So can we kind of touch on that on this comment here? And Asif, I'm going to go to you on this, and then you guys feel free to chime in. These comments are popping. Finding a spouse is not the problem. It is finding someone that is equally yoked, that's spiritual. Go ahead, Asif.
Well, to me, I believe that it depends on the individual. I've created something called a relationship box. Me personally, I have 4 areas in life that I feel like are essential to be equally yoked with me.
Mm-hmm.
I have a spiritual square, I have an intellectual square, I have an emotional square, and I have a physical square. Now, those squares right there are important to me because, we can talk about Jesus all day. We can have foot washer services and do revivals and have all of the spiritual connection is all outdoors, but I can't talk to you about my business, or I can't have an intellectual conversation about a documentary I just saw, or I can't really have a conversation about what's going on with my kids or what's going on with them at school. That's a challenge, because now that is a void and is destitute. And now I'm leaning somewhere else to have these conversations. Then I have my emotional box. I can't even have a conversation with you. Why? Because you don't make me feel safe. You're not safe. And if someone that don't make you feel safe, you can't trust them. And then if you can't trust somebody, you can't respect them. And then if you can't respect them, you definitely can't love them. So at the end of the day, that emotional box
Come on,
is important. That emotional square is very important to me. And then you got your physical thing. And it's not so much about just sex. It's the fact that I'm very affectionate. I'm a hugger. I like to get a hug. Some people like hugs, some people don't. I need to know that I can get a hug. So at the end of the day, when I say equally yoked, I don't believe in a perfect person. I just believe I got to know myself. I got to know who I am. I got to know what I value.
Yeah.
And if once I know what I value, then I go at all those squares and figure out, does this person have me covered in these squares. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect in every square, but I do believe a person that is spiritual, that's on your level intellectually, and got your back emotionally, you won't have a problem with the physical square.
I agree.
I think when you don't have things checked off in these other areas, you have to work harder in the physical square.
And when you don't know who you are and what you desire, you're going to have all of these type of issues.
You're going to have all of them. And the truth of the matter
have all of these issues.
You're going to walk in what you believe you are. You're going to walk in that. So whatever you value, that's what you're going to walk in. I need all 4 of those squares to be impacted in my life. I need all of them. I'm not going to settle for, I don't have to have an emotional conversation with this person. I don't have to trust this person. I do need somebody that's going to help me pay bills, or at least they can go to church with me on Sunday. You know what? He don't have to be that saved. He don't, long as he don't stop me from going to church. You know, we pick and choose what we want. But equally yoked means we got these things covered and it's easy. We just wake up, be us. And God can do the rest. But when you don't have these things covered, you got to work hard in the other areas that you don't have. And then that's how cheating starts. Because if you can't talk to somebody, you're going to talk to somebody else. If you can't get a hug from this person, you're going to get a hug from somebody else. You know, if you don't want to go to church, you're going to have all the time in the world to talk to somebody that does go to church. I just think equally yoked means finding out what you value. And having that person understand your values and have the capacity to contribute to those values, and you vice versa. Next thing you know, it's very easy.
You know, I'm tickled because you said something. You said, oh, they don't have to be that saved. I laughed because my mama is not having that for me. I think I said that, and she was just like, I love my mom. I do. And my mom does not have a problem with saying, girl, what is your problem? I'll never forget. And rightfully so, because I had a conversation and I was basically alluding to the fact that this person does not have to be that saved. They don't have to be on my level. As long as they, you know, have a general idea of who God is and a desire to know him more, they don't have to be perfect. But real talk, I was kind of low-key heathenistic, if for lack of a better word. But that tickled me. But this question is for you, because it says, what if they fill your squares, but you don't fill theirs?
That's the whole idea. That's what equally yoked is. It's called fair exchange. Anything that is unfair and not equal together, that's not cool. Here I am, always available for you, but you're not always available for me. You got the capacity for me, but I really am dismissive and don't have the capacity for you. I think, again, you have to self-reflect yourself. Be honest with yourself. This is what I value, not what other people value. Because the truth of the matter is, when you're going after somebody and you're just trying to get a benefit out of somebody, what you do is you find out, you bring your ambassador on the date. You're going to give them exactly what you're going to be, what that person needs to give you that benefit that you want. It's not even what you value. It's going to be what they value. And then you'll be in a relationship with somebody just going off what they value, and then they don't value what you value. You got to be honest. Like YPJ said, it's not wrong. You can be in an fair exchange if you want to,
but you're gonna have to deal with the consequences of that.
You're gonna get hurt. You're gonna get hurt.
But is that certain that you are? And here's why I say this, because I've seen marriages. Now, I am not condoning. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I have seen marriages where one person was saved and the other wasn't. And their marriage has outlasted a couple who were believers. That's interesting to me, because I've seen it happen. Well, and it's not wrong.
No, it ain't wrong. You're just not maximizing what you're not maximizing what God gave you the potential to have.
With the responses, Asa.
No, that's really what it is. It's just that. It's not wrong. You're just not maximizing that, and you have to actually water down God. in
Woo!
order to survive in that environment. That's no different than when we all want to go and do something wrong. We don't bring God with us. We don't. You don't bring Jesus to some place you know you shouldn't be. So you got to water him down in order to be in those environments, and you let love that you have for that person overtake purpose. So to me, I want to maximize what I have. That doesn't mean I'm going to have the perfect person, but if you're going to be with someone that don't want, I guarantee you, you can't just have Bible study with that person. You're just not going to be able to do that. And you're going to go to church. But that's why most churches are 70% women and 30% men, because women are becoming the action instead of the reaction. Because the truth is, when God made man, Adam was here by himself. He saw an issue. There was a need. And he didn't create another animal. He didn't create nothing else. He created a woman. And he actually created a woman to be an answer. He's an answer to a need. So what happens is women by nature they're looking for something to react to. So when your man doesn't have that equally yoked issue, I don't care if he's not intellectual with you, if he doesn't have the capacity to be emotional with you, if he doesn't have God knows if he doesn't have the spiritual thing, you're reacting to something false, because women have to react. And that's what's going to happen, So when a man at least knows who he is, what he's doing, and he at least has those essentials there, a woman can react to that. It'll be very easy. I know, like Danielle, I know what kind of woman she is. We joke when we talk all the time. If a man is doing what he's supposed to be doing, she's going to react to that. And she's going to say, okay, let's go. And soon as he's not doing it, she's going to go the other way. I just feel like that's what has to happen. We have to maximize. We have the opportunity to maximize and be in bliss.
So basically what you're saying is it is a strong possibility, because I can't say that that's a blanket statement for everyone, because there may be people who feel like they are maximizing. But then there are others who feel like, you know what, if I do decide to marry someone and perhaps I am saved, I've been running with Jesus for a long time. Someone said on here, tithing and all kinds of stuff that is so important for them. And I get it. If that person decides to marry someone and they say, well, this is not on my list to check off, who are we to say that they're not maximizing if that's not on their list? So to me, it tells me that it's subjective. Now, the Bible does tell us, in regards to red flags, things that we should avoid. Now, if we want to do a blanket statement, I'll say this, that anything that leads you away, if you are a believer, if it leads you away from Christ, leads you away, then right there, that's the ultimate red flag. If it's going to lead me astray, if it's going to lead me to hell, if he is going to lead me there, if she is going to lead me there, this is not the person for me. That's not the person for me.
I want to say this too. Red flags is different than deal breakers. So you got a red flag, that means run, but then you got a deal breaker and be like, oh, this ain't a deal breaker. So it's kind of like,
some people consider red flags deal breakers. This red flag is so can they be work in tandem with one another? Can they be synonymous with one another?
I mean, they actually can, but the truth is a person, the statement I made was you can get hurt or you will get hurt. Most people, when they're completely honest and they go to a therapist and they'll talk to a therapist, they'll tell a therapist why they're not happy. And when they're not on that couch, they're telling themselves that everything is okay. I'm just saying, when people are honest about what they value and you with someone that cannot give you what you value, you can choose and say that's not a deal breaker and everything's all right. But eventually, if you're honest with yourself, you'll end up getting hurt. Because once you decide to be honest with yourself, then that's when hurt can come in. Some people have to tell themselves that nothing is happening so they can be okay. And I'm just saying, when you're honest with yourself, like bone just straight honest with yourself and you with someone that is doing the opposite of what you need and what's happening, you're going to end up getting hurt.
Well, I believe that that is a person, honestly, who has not really concretized what they value, just even as it pertains to themselves as a human being. And there are so many things that can be the reason why they feel the way that they do, or why they have such I would say poor or low self-esteem, or why they accept someone doing the exact opposite of what they need. But there are quite a few things that can attribute to that, and that's a rabbit hole in and of itself. Again, all of these things, they are subjective. One of the words that we talked about is wisdom. And if you want to know more about wisdom, you definitely need to read Proverbs, because it is full of just wisdom, just practical things that will help you make wiser decisions as it pertains to your life in general. This person said this, and I would like to know the difference. YPJ, maybe you can hit on this. When we were talking about being equally yoked. And I believe that I mentioned something about believing in Jesus Christ. Like, that is just one of the things that I have as established that is not something that I would want my spouse to be the opposite of. You're going to have to believe in Jesus Christ, and that's what it is. But this person said, my parents, they said my dad is Hebrew and my mom is Christian. Is there a different belief system between the Hebrew and the Christian?
Yeah, there's a few differences, but that would open up a can of worms you don't want to touch in right now. But there's differences. Asaph gave an incredible response to equally yoked. Incredible response, my brother. But here's where people would be upset. When Paul says, be not unequally yoked with unbelievers, he was not talking about relationships in that passage of scripture. He was talking about spiritual alliances.
Okay.
So church folks gonna use that verse. Be not unequally yoked with unbelievers. That's not what he was even talking about. But the reality of it is, we don't really have, and this is a part where I always get in trouble, we don't have a lot of biblical strong context to say that a person who's an Hebrew and a person who's a Christian can't have a relationship that's prosperous, because we don't know what they were when they met each other. So there's different factors, but I do believe, as Asaph said, that those that are knowledgeable moving forward into what they're going to get involved in, you maximize potential of a relationship by truly pursuing God's best for you. The fact is, you don't even know what God's best is for you. So when people say things like, I want somebody that's going to maximize who I am, but they don't say, I want somebody that's going to help me maximize my assignment in God, which I don't even know yet. So if I am with somebody that has a like-mindedness in Christ, or whatever it is, the two people do, is going to make a greater probability of fulfilling something greater. So that's the reason why, like myself, Asaph, will say things like, our tolerance is low. It's not because we're mean-spirited or we think we're better. It's like, we really at a point now where we want to maximize who we are in God. And I think there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way. But as far as, I know a guy his wife is Christian, he's Muslim. They have a relationship, they have a great family. But when they both found their faith, neither one of them had a faith. They got married before they found a faith. They just went in two different directions. But at the end of the day, like I said, we don't have a lot of strong biblical context besides scriptures that we quote. And people get mad, it's fine, because religion and tradition will make you numb and make you deaf. But there's a lot of people that are, how could two walk together except they be agreed? Absolutely. But what did that mean in context?
What does it mean?
You know what I'm saying? And are they doing that? So I think Asaph's answer was actually a sound answer to help people that want to know about what it means to be yoked. Because Paul's talking about animals. And as he was actually talking about oxen and how they have to be yoked. It's a piece of wood that keeps them together. And he was saying unequally yoked. There was an analogy they would use in biblical times where you were saying a horse and an oxen couldn't be yoked together because one is taller than the other. So their necks would be bent down. It would make them contorted,
Mm-hmm.
pull them away from their actual alignment and assignment. And that's exactly what happens when you connect yourself with people who are on the same mindset. But I think it's difficult to try to tell somebody, yo, what you got ain't going to work, because any biblical context for that.
Yeah. And this person definitely said something that is important. That's why you need to seek God's approval for future spouses, for relationships. Bible says, in all thy ways acknowledge him and he will direct your path, which is taking me to this next question that I have, because I've looked at it as a red flag before. And that is, as we are just praying to God just about relationships and spouses, you have encountered different individuals who would say, God said, you are my spouse. God said, you are my spouse. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's heard that before, whether in the comment section or you're here. God said, you are my spouse. And I've had that said to me a few times before. And the thought process for me is, now how can 3 or 4 people be saying this at the same time? That doesn't make sense to me. That you're all saying this unanimously. So I want to know, and I'm coming back to you, YPJ, because I think that in certain situations, it can be, you know what, that's a red flag. Because I feel like sometimes people manipulate in using that terms, especially if you are a person that is saved. And if you have not reached a level of maturity where you have a relationship with God, that you can actually hear him clearly, and that you have this sense of discernment that you haven't developed yet, you can be easily manipulated. Well, God said it because God said, you said God said it, so let's do it. So what are your thoughts on that?
One of y'all said it, trifold beings. Well, as a trifold being, what you have to understand is, even when you're dealing with voices, there's trifold voices. You have the voice of the Lord, your voice, and you have the voice of the enemy. That could be demonic, it could be a devil, whatever. Most people constantly hear the voice of themselves. So the Lord, you have yourself, and you have the enemy. Whichever one you train and you hone the most is the one that you'll become most sensitive to. The Bible says in the book of James that people are drawn away and enticed when they go after their own lust, which means that many people call desire prophecy. God said, that's not what God said. That's a desire. You desire it, you heard it within yourself, and because you desire it, you blocked out every other voice that would tell you opposite of it. So now, because you want it, the voice of the enemy is in agreement with your voice.
Wow.
God. It is a preposterous thing to believe that 100 different women can tell one man, and this is something I have to deal with all the time.
100, my goodness.
Let me say this to you, ladies. If you say to a man who is not aware of who you are, God said you are my husband, you have shut that door forever, unless he himself is psychotic, because you have most likely been drawn away by your own lust and enticed. The Bible actually calls those kind of women silly women. That's an actual phrase. It calls you silly.
Wow.
So men do it, women do it, but it's not just with marriage. You know, how many people, Asaph, have come to you, man, God told me we're supposed to work together. And you like, God didn't say that. You want my musical ability and you're drawn to it. So you're trying to replace the voice of God with the desire and turn it into a prophecy. So it's preposterous, it's foolishness. And not, you know, some God can say, somebody called me the other day, one of the pastor from Virginia, she said, I just want to give you a heads up. One of my members came to me the other day and said that God said that you were her husband. And I had sugar. And I said, well, tell her to stand in line, because 100 other ones saying the same thing.
Woo!
You know, so it lets you know that you can become delusional in desire.
Wow. 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 That right there was very potent. I agree. Now I have somebody who's in this comment section because they going off. They're going off. This person, well, they did say that, okay, we're going to get to your questions. Some people are saying that it's a trap, that when you hear that, that it's a trap. And then you have someone that says, you know, God showed me that my wife was my wife. I know God told me that. And here we are 25 years.
And that may be the case, but I assure you that that person properly pursued that woman. I seriously doubt they went up to her and just met her on the street.
Mm-hmm.
God told me you my wife. That's not, I guarantee you, God can give you an inkling and show you a thing and you can pursue it properly.
Mm-hmm.
Really God, then it's going to manifest, right? So that person can say, God said that was my wife. Okay, well, you have the evidence to prove you heard God. So we don't do that. So shout out to that person. I think that's awesome. Many people, that God has told me many things, but just because he says it, that's what Joseph messed up. He ran out telling everybody what he heard, and it got him in a whole lot of trouble. So if it's really God, that's the Bible says when a prophet makes a prophetic word, the way we know he is a prophet, it comes to pass.
Yes.
People say, I heard the Lord. Well, then we shall see. But if you say God said a thing, it does not come to pass. Now we get to call you delusional because you put emphasis on something that you had no credibility to state. So I'm not saying that God can't say it to you. I'm just saying if it was really God, then
it will manifest.
It'll manifest and you do your part. So
yeah, and they agreed. They said that actually they did pursue. They pursued them properly. So for a woman and or a man, because you hit on something, you said it would manifest. Do the opposite person do they play a role in it manifesting? And what I'm saying is, if it is God and God is giving you an inkling and you are pursuing that person, but they decline, can you say that that person missed God? And I'm talking about the person that was being pursued.
You can say whatever you want to say. You can go, oh, I did my part. That was they missed God. This is why it's a slippery slope to run around saying God said.
Mm-hmm.
Have a word in your heart. Trust the word in your heart. Follow and pursue properly what you believe is the instruction. So like if God told me right now, you and Asaph going to do an album together. I'm not going to call Asaph and say, Asaph, man, God told me we doing an album together. I'm going to trust that God said that and allow because if God gives me a word, he's responsible to line things up for me to go in the direction. So now I'm not looking for Asaph. I'm looking for an instruction. So what's the next instruction to get to the next place that connects me to Asaph to do this album? Because he's not obligated to feel a conviction because I heard something in my heart.
Wow.
So Asaph, man, God said it. You got to do it. No. Now, if Asaph calls me, says, man, I think I heard God say we're supposed to do an album. Now I know we're in agreement.
Confirmation.
Same thing. Or I show up to Fred's studio, Asaph's there working. I walk in, and all of a sudden he's doing something. He said, "YP, what you think about this?" And we connect on that level where I'm like, "Yo, you should do this." And he's like, "Bet." Hey man, we should. Now you're watching it organically evolve. But to rush what you claim God says shows you don't trust God at all because of how you're moving trying to pursue it. So if you trust this process, I don't trust you heard his voice.
Wow.
You understand? So he's obligated. God's not going to give you a word and not give you the instructions on how to get there. We just become impatient off the word and try to force the outcome. And that's where a lot of people mess up.
Woo! This is good. This is good. We're getting ready to move into the Q&A. I have questions that are in the comment section. And shortly after that, we'll begin to wrap. But I want to pull up this question. So go ahead. If you have questions, we have the answers. Well, at least I hope we have the answers. This person says, how does or what are some of the ways a man comes to the realization that a woman is his wife? Please. So they're asking, what are some of the ways that a man will come to that realization that a woman is his wife? Asa? Why you gotta chuckle?
I'm chuckling because YPJ said yes. No, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's a very simple thing. A man is just sure. I think sometimes women can be sure about somebody, but the man isn't sure. If a man isn't sure, it's not happening. I think once a man realizes that he's sure about somebody, he can at least pursue it. If it's successful or not, he can pursue it because he's sure. A man is going to be sure. And once he's sure, then God can do whatever he's going to do. I think a man that's nervous or unsure or have a question mark is going to be a problem. It's just a simple answer. A man will be sure about a woman that he's going to marry. Once he's sure, that's it.
Now, that's pretty much it for me. I totally agree with that. Being sure. For me, I have thought in past times that maybe there is, because going back to what Danielle was saying, she was talking about a time frame. And again, there are people who put a time frame on being sure about going further into a relationship with me, and taking it from being, or I should say, collecting data, to now we are courting, and now we are engaged, and now we are married. Now there are instances where people have been engaged for years, which is interesting to me. To me, that tells me that a person is not sure, wasn't sure to begin with. So I think what it boils down to is acknowledging God. If you are a believer, really acknowledge God. And then actually just set just some expectations as well. There's nothing wrong with that. Know yourself and know what it is that you desire. Because as a woman, I'll say personally, if you want to marry me, why do we have to be engaged for 2 and 3 years? Now, I do know that there are some people, they're taking time, just investing, and, they want to buy a home. There's certain things that they want to do. And so they're stacking their funds and so forth and so on. So that happens within maybe that year, or however that time frame they set that date. But nevertheless, when it comes to 3 years and so forth and so on, I just think that is a person that is just not sure about you. That's not a man. And I do a man that is sure. I'm sorry, not to say that's not a man. That's not a man that is sure about you. So a man will pursue you and he will be sure. That's just the end all. That is the end all. I'm seeing if there's any questions. Someone just dropped this. They said, at what point in a new relationship do you seek wisdom from others in references to your choice? Ooh, okay. Sharon made mention of her mother stressing her mate has to be saved. At what point do you bring other people into the relationship and asking them for advice?
That varies, because that just varies. I mean, you got to figure that out for your own personal safety circle. I mean, there's some of us, we ain't telling nobody for a very long time. And then there are others who they ask their mother right away. They need that counsel. They need to know, hey, do you think I should? So that just varies.
I agree. And again, to your point, my mother is that person that I feel safe with, just talking with, because I know she's not going to cut any corners. And I believe that as a mother, she desires to protect me. I am the baby girl. So at the end of the day, she desires for me to have, God's best, if I can say it like that. She wants me to have a successful relationship. So just like any mother, any parent, they want the best for their children. And so I don't disagree that there's a potential for me to be hurt or led astray if this person is not saved and they lead me down the wrong path. Then I can be derailed, and I don't want that ultimately. So yeah. Somebody says, would love YPJ to answer the question about readiness for marriage. I'm not sure if somebody asked a question about readiness for marriage, but I would love for YPJ to answer the question about readiness for marriage.
What question was that? I don't remember.
I don't remember, but can you go ahead? If this was you that asked the question, go ahead and type it again about readiness for marriage. Does engagement has to be lengthy, like 2 to 3 years? In my opinion, I don't believe so. That's just me.
Say something about that though. That varies too, and I'm gonna tell you.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna say this. I'm saying this. I understand when women say that. I don't want to be engaged, but there's different. This is why absolutes are just not a thing.
Okay.
I could get engaged to a woman. He has to serve a 4-year tour in the military. He's like, babe, I want to get engaged now, so I'm committing my heart to you, but I'm going to be gone for 4 years. Or a person could literally say, you know, hey, I want us to get engaged now as freshmen in college. Let's get through school, and then when we graduate, but let's commit ourselves to each other now. So a lot of times it isn't a person prolonging because of indecisiveness, as much as them knowing that if we're going to have a successful marriage, we need to take some time, but they know this is the person that I want to be with. So I think because we have desire, we'll say, you need to hurry up. But I'm gonna be honest with you. I'd rather you be engaged 4 years and have a lasting marriage than be engaged for 6 months and get divorced in 3 years. So I'm just saying there's factors.
There are factors, but I think in this
way, you know, I'm just saying that always consider why. You know what I mean? There's always a why.
Now, there's always a why. Now, in this case, and I'm going to just clarify for myself, if a man is engaged to me, but he wants the benefits of a wife, he wants to be sexually active with me, he wants me to do certain things while we're engaged, then why not marry me?
But that's different.
I think it is, but that's what I'm saying. Consider the why.
Right.
Just like you're saying, because if it's
there's different factors. And I agree with you. I'm not saying play house. I'm saying there I know men that have said, Pastor, I'm engaging my wife now because I'm leaving in 2 years.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I want her to know I'm not gonna be with another woman. I'm not thinking about nobody. I want when I come back, we get married. So all I'm saying is I just, and the reason why I bring that up is I heard a woman go clean off about it the other day.
Really?
If you got to be married, engaged for 3 years, leave him. I'm like, that's not, you can't talk in absolutes because you don't know the various situations that people are in. That's all I'm saying.
I certainly agree. So I think go ahead, Asa.
No, I was going to say, I think that this is 139% an opinionated question, because truth is, I agree. I know people that feel like YPJ just said, and as well as maybe the women that are saying 3 years is too long and all of that. I've seen that too, but I represent the market of people that feels like whatever you're waiting for can be done all at the same time. Oh. I'm just a different type of person. I just believe while I'm out for 4 years on service, we could just be, if you okay with us being married while I'm out for 4 years, and you okay with that, then we can just be married while we out there for 4 years. I don't like the idea, me personally, I don't like the idea of, it's covenant, right? It's like covenant is serious, and some people can't handle not having covenant. I know some guys that will get engaged and wait for 2 years, but they don't do well without covenant. And then that's how the whole side thing happens, you know. And then, you know, there's some women that end up going through something, and next thing you know, like on Good Times when JJ's wife went out the window, you know, that thing can happen. A person can change their mind if we give the enemy enough time to change it. Like I said, when two people are sure, I believe two people can do anything. They can stack at the same time. They can work on things at the same time. It's like, that's a prenuptial agreement idea for me. If we got to do stuff and accomplish stuff first before we get married, that just kind of is my personal opinion. I just think that women that want to rush a man, that's not the right thing. They're not a good fit. I just think it's a good fit. I think a man that don't want to wait, he ain't going to want to wait with you. I think a man that wants to wait, I think a woman's going to want to wait too. I just think that's what a good fit is. Two people have the same thing that they want to do. And if you want to do two separate things, that's stress.
Got you. I agree. And we're going to take these last two questions and then we're going to close up. The person came back and basically stated what it is they wanted you to answer. They said, how does a man know he is ready for marriage? That's what he's or she. I'm sorry. I don't even know if you're he or she. I do apologize. But how does a man know he's ready for marriage?
Well, Asa said it, and it's true. I think there is a knowing. There's just a knowing. You're aware of the timing, and each person is different. It's a complex question because all of us, like you said, are different in our desires. So you do have to know for yourself. For me, there's certain things that I want to make sure that I have accomplished before I even focus on them. But there is just something about knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Biblically, that's the highest level of faith. Faith is still a place of belief, but when you get to the place of knowing, it even goes beyond belief. It's a deeper level of it. So I just think there is a place where you go and you know, okay.
Got you. And then, Asa, can you answer this fairly quickly? Because this person says when they, oh God, I lost it. I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you. Okay. They said YPJ talked about factors. Apparently, this young lady doesn't have brothers. So she wants you, can you list off quickly the factors of that a man considers when it pertains to marrying a woman? As it pertains to marrying a woman? What are the factors that help them realize that this is it?
Well, I mean, one of the factors, I mean, there's many factors, and there's, first of all, personality is personalities. I mean, everyone has a total different personality. I think the factors here is, you know, being able to understand that you don't see yourself going on with life without this woman. A man that feels that way, two things are happening. He believes that. Also, he's not interested in some other man having access to that. When a man realizes that somebody else, he don't want someone else, and I don't mean just a covetous person. I'm not talking about a person that just wants to, be controlling. But when a man realizes that he can't imagine spending life with someone else, like he don't want to go through life without this woman, that is one of the main factors that can take place, because he's going to move on that. He's going to be sure that it's her that does that, And then another factor is going to be the fact that I'm going to say something that might sound fantasy, but I'm going to be honest with you. When a man has a woman that helps him see God more, because the truth of the matter is, when your relationship with God is better because this woman is in your life, that's another thing. Talking about from a believer standpoint, you really want to have a good relationship with God, and a woman that makes you not talk to God is a bad situation. So
make me
I really do. Yeah, so that's it. Like, you can't make it. The Bible says that that husband loves your wives as Christ loved the church and gave his life for it. That's a different type of love, giving your life for it. Christ loved the church, but there's a lot of men that ain't gonna give their life for nothing. So when you love a woman enough, you just feel like this is what you willing to do any and everything for this woman. You can't imagine life without this woman. That's the factor.
That is so good. And I'm going to piggyback off of that and say, for me, if I don't feel that way about my husband, this is not the man for me. Hands down. Hands down. Because that should be reciprocated. It's not just one way. I want to feel that exact way. I'm that type of woman where I feel like, listen, if I'm focused on loving you the way that you are supposed to be loved, and you're focused on loving me the way that I'm supposed to be loved, there's no room for error. Now, we're going to go through certain situations or whatever, but it's the love that we have for one another that is going to keep that relationship close and maturing and growing even deeper. So that's where I am. Yes, reciprocity. This has been such an incredible conversation this evening, and I'm so glad that so many of you joined us on tonight. If we didn't get to your questions, please, forgive us. We can be here all night, but we don't want to do that. Some of us have other things that we have to do and jobs to work in the morning. But I'm so glad that we were able to just share some gems with you on tonight, and really hope that you guys got something from this. Here's what I'm going to do. I want to share this quick video with you to give you just some information on SNS Co-Ed and how you can stay connected with us.
We hope you enjoyed today's virtual discussion. SNS Co-Ed is appreciative of your support and your financial donations. We want to thank our viewers, sponsors, partners, and those of you who've given donations to help support the vision of SNS Co-Ed. We couldn't do this without you. Our in-person and online events are made possible because of your generous contributions. Everything we do has you in mind. We desire to provide you with the tools and resources you need to thrive, along with providing a life-changing experience. In light of that, we're asking that you please consider joining this movement and partnering with us by donating to this cause. Whether it's a one-time donation or monthly pledge, we greatly appreciate it. Your contributions will help us cover expenses and help us broaden our reach so we can impact our community and the world. All monetary donations can be sent via these avenues: Cash App, Zelle, or PayPal. This information is provided to you on the screen. If you're looking to partner or be a sponsor, please send an email to snsexec@gmail.com. That's snsexec@gmail.com. We'd love to send you our sponsorship packet along with additional information on how you can partner with SNS Co-Ed. Again, thank you all for your contributions. SNS Co-Ed Live is on Facebook and YouTube, and we want to stay connected with you. Join our community to stay posted on the latest events and sessions. Don't forget to share and invite someone as well. Type in SNS Co-Ed Live, then follow, like, and subscribe.